Hello, my name is Anna Meenan. I am the Programme Manager of the Traditional Farm Buildings Grant Scheme, and this is a recording of the information webinar for the 2024 scheme, and I hope it will be helpful to applicants. We administer this grant scheme on behalf of the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine. Between 2016 and 2021, the scheme supported 382 applicants to conserve over 520 buildings and also numerous other related farm structures. And we are now into the 9th tranche of this phase and also the 15th year overall of the scheme. The principal objective of this scheme is to ensure that traditional farm buildings and other related structures that contribute to the character of the landscape and are of significant heritage value are conserved for agricultural use. So that's landscape, heritage and use. All are important, all matter. We ask for a photo of the building in the landscape, and it's one that many applications have fallen down on. So I'm going to show a few here. We want to see the building in relation to its surroundings. That's important. The building doesn't exist in isolation. We want to see it in relation to the rest of the farm. This is a traditional farm building grant project in the Man Valley, Connemara, that was supported a couple of years ago. It can be seen across a wide mountain landscape, largely due to its painted red tin roof. Note how it's sited into the hill, so you have access to the loft from the house and then to the ground floor area from the field. One of the questions we ask on the application is there a public view of your building? And if your answer is yes, we ask you to provide a photograph of it. One of the criteria used for scoring applications is projects that will best demonstrate public benefit, including landscape value. So, if your building is not visible from a public view, you must address very well how your project will be of public benefit. And we give tips on this in the guidance document. So I just want to be clear, we can and do support projects that are not visible from the road, but you must demonstrate other public benefit. We try through our grant schemes and other work to raise public appreciation of heritage, and your application must show that your project will demonstrate strong public benefit. And it's called the Traditional Farm Buildings Grant Scheme, but we can support more than buildings on this scheme. Other related traditional farm structures, such as historic yard surfaces, landscape features around the farmyard, walls, farm gates and piers, walled orchards, mill races, etc., are eligible. But note, as traditional dry stone wall maintenance is a general action available under acres, dry stone walls are unlikely to be eligible for consideration for a grant on this scheme. If your project is shortlisted for a grant, you will be written to asking that you engage a conservation consultant to draw up a specification for the repairs. That is only if your project is shortlisted. You are not required to hire a conservation consultant at this initial application stage. We encourage applicants to make the application themselves. We say it should be easy and cheap to make an application, and we mean that, but it will take time. It might take any time between 1 to 4 hours. It just depends on the amount of information you are providing. All we ask at this stage is that you answer the questions and provide what is asked for. So the particular photographs, a map, and a quote, and all to be submitted online by the deadline of 27th of March. Now, in terms of the works, you should consider the sort of work that needs to be done and also how urgent it is. You will see in the application and guidance our emphasis on the word repair. That is the focus of this scheme. The work should be the minimum necessary, carrying out a repair to fix what is wrong, but not setting out to do too much work. We are focused on keeping the historic fabric, historic materials for both heritage and environmental reasons. We do not expect to see reusable material not used in the repairs. At least 40% of the roof timber on the left was capable of reuse, and the reusable roll-top ridge that ended up in the skip on the right was taken out and put back on the building. All are part of the heritage interest of the building, and if capable of reuse, should be reused, if capable. Just a note on membranes, as so many projects are roofing projects. What you see in this photograph is what can be considered the original membrane provided to a roof. This is the roof structure of a Linney type building. The line parging to the underside of the slate roof was substantially intact. The parging acts as a secondary means of fixing to the nails and also a secondary line of defence against rain. When you see parging that intact, it is generally a very good sign, and one where you hope localised slate repairs could be carried out. And if full reslating is required, we agree with you whether the parging should be reapplied or not. A reason why we support something like parging is that we want to support traditional skills on the scheme, including the wet trades. If someone can apply lime parging to the underside of slates, then they can also apply lime render to walls. And note that's washed cowtails to the left. You need parging to stick and not to be falling on the poor plasterer's head. It needs a fibre component. Cowtails serve this function, and while there are other commercial options, they are a free local material. We also don't allow something like felt because the breathable version is considered deathly harmful to bats, and we want to protect them as much as the building. We're a heritage body, and all heritage matters to us. This is a Killaloe slate, which has a well-deserved reputation of being a very good quality slate, but unfortunately it is no longer quarried. Here you can see on the rear, the slates were laid in diminishing courses. So that means different size slates and also a large number of slates. Great care needs to be taken when stripping the slate of any roof to ensure as many as possible can be saved for reuse. But no matter how much care is taken, there will be a shortfall. You also have to consider the durability of the slate you will be putting back on the roof. In the case of any shortfall, we will usually recommend that it be made up of soundly sourced second-hand or new slate of best comparable match to the original slate in terms of size, colour, texture, thickness. And when we say soundly sourced second-hand, what we are asking is, please don't use architectural salvage from elsewhere unless certain that the taking of the materials has not caused the destruction of another old repairable building or has been the result of theft. Every year we receive applications for unroofed structures. Restoration works are considered a low priority under this grant scheme. There is certainly a place for restoration, but this scheme's particular focus is on the conservation of existing fabric, the repair and reuse of existing materials. Buildings that have fallen into disrepair and/or have an uncertain use may require larger sums of money in the future, and so the benefit of the initial funding can be lost very quickly and not represent good value. But we do consider them on occasion, and these are the criteria that we bear in mind for restoration projects, or what we might call roofless structures. Exceptional circumstances, strong evidence for the roof that was there, that they would complete an otherwise intact environment, and that it is necessary to do. These buildings were built to be used. They endure. They deserve to be used. One of the reasons the Department of Agriculture funds this scheme is that they recognise that these historic buildings can still serve as useful assets for the farm. Minister McConlogue has stated that by reusing existing buildings, it contributes to climate change mitigation and the sustainable use of resources and supports farmers in their endeavours to be more climate resilient. And I think we are all aware of the ongoing debate about climate and agriculture and the solutions needed. A unique aspect of the scheme is the number of own labour projects or part own labour projects carried out. About 40% of projects on the scheme to date have included some aspect of own labour. You might want to make use of a fallow time in your farming calendar, and it's something we've always encouraged if that is what you wish to do. You don't have to do it, it's if you wish to do it. You will see in the budget costs of the application, you can provide estimates for time and materials. The rates for own labour to be costed within Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine rates. Last year it was €15.52 and that remains unchanged. And to note, only approved conservation works will be eligible and must be agreed in advance with the Heritage Council. So things like clearance, project management, etc. wouldn't be a priority. They are not conservation works. Now, if you or your builder do not have experience in the use of certain traditional materials, for example, lime mortar, you must undertake training in it, and the cost of this is grant eligible. There are different organisations which carry out training, and we have details of these on our website. Some grantees have availed of on-site training, whereby an experienced builder acts as a mentor to their builder or themselves for a short time. We do not insist on heritage contractors, but we do ask that you and your builder bring a conservation ethos to repairs. Now, how applications are scored. There's 5 different criteria. 1, the heritage interest of the building. Another is public benefit, including landscape value. Another is climate change mitigation. Also, best value, including value for money. And our 5th, habitat value or potential. And each of those criteria has a score of 20. And if your application is shortlisted, it is likely you will have to arrange a bat-bird survey of your building, as so many of these buildings, thankfully, serve as wildlife habitats. And a cost towards it will be included in any grant offer. Please do not arrange this survey now, but please do tell us in your application what you will do to help wildlife as part of your project. And if your building has bats, you will likely have the challenge of winter working. The roof works carried out here are to a range of substantial farm buildings, that long linear range in the middle of the photograph. The house is listed on the county's record of protected structures, and the buildings also serve as a wildlife habitat for bats. And a derogation licence was sought and obtained from National Parks and Wildlife Service. One of the requirements of the licence was that the earliest works to the roof could begin was the 1st of November. Works have to be complete within the calendar year under grant deadlines, so you can see how challenging that can be. The applicant's conservation architect determined that full reslating was not required here. There were isolated areas of slip slate, but the vast majority were secure. Most of the rafters and collars were in excellent condition. It was the top 5 rows of slates at the ridge where most of the slippage had occurred, and this was due to the failure of the ridge board. So many of the rafters were not meeting the ridge as it is separated from them. And you can see there where there's additional collars being brought in. It's an example of what we call an honest repairs. A very experienced builder and conservation architect were involved on this project, along with the ecologist. And this is an ambitious project to save this roof, which was completed. It is a high, very substantial building, and all finished by early December. It's a super project and can be seen in the resources section of our website. Now, onto what I might call challenges which arise or can arise, and thankfully rarely. If you are successful, we agree a specification before work start. And that agreement serves as a type of contract between you, the applicant, the Heritage Council, the Department of Agriculture, the builder, if there is one, and the conservation consultant. It should be followed and any changes agreed in advance. In this case, a spot inspection was carried out by the applicant's conservation architect, and she noted that much of the agreed specification for repairs was not being followed. The architect informed the applicants of her concerns and that she would be informing us, as she was concerned for them that their grant was at stake. And on being notified, we also expressed doubts that the agreed works were not being followed and that the grant was in danger. We arranged an inspection by a member of our grant assessment panel, and when he inspected, the works were still in progress and still not being carried out as agreed. A very substantial grant withdrawn, unfortunately. Now, that's a worst case scenario, and I will say, thankfully, rarely happens. It's best we are made aware of any problems at an early stage. In this case, on the top left, we were not satisfied with what we saw on inspection. The pointing carried out had cracked at several locations, and we believe this was due to the incorrect use of neat lime to form the mortar, instead of mixing lime with aggregate, which is standard practice. And regardless of the makeup of the mortar, it also appeared that the pointing had not been applied correctly. Unfortunately, this all suggested that there was a general lack of knowledge and experience in the use of lime mortars. The applicant engaged another stonemason to provide additional expertise to his own stonemason in the correct use of lime mortar, and following snagging, we have a much improved result, which you can see there on the bottom left. In the case on the right, the applicant was required to replace the lightweight timber doors and shutters with heavier planks and bracing, and more what you might call sympathetic examples. Now, onto, I suppose, Department of Agriculture conditions. So, eligibility, use, maintenance. So, approved applicants in acres, and also those applicants who have applied to be in acres are eligible to apply to the scheme pending approval. Also, participants in European Innovation Partnership, EIP, calls 1, 2, and 3. And lastly, approved participants of the organic farming scheme. And there will also be conditions in terms of maintaining the building if you're grant aided, and of course also that the building must be in use for your farm. It's really essential that the building is used. Now, our own conditions, I've touched on the conservation consultant, also the bat bird survey, also the agreement of the specification, and also in terms of public benefit. Everyone will have to do something in terms of public benefit, demonstrating the public benefit of the grant. That's if you are successful. Now, the financial considerations, very important. So the maximum grant is 30,000. And note that we have always stated grants up to 75%. That up to is important. An applicant must input at least 25% of their own resources. Not all grants will be 75%, and we state this in the guidance. But if a grant offer is made to you, you'll have 2 to 3 weeks to decide whether or not to accept the offer. And you are welcome to address any queries with us on it during that time. And another thing to be aware of in terms of the finances is that everything must be paid in advance. So on completion of project, you will have to provide proof of payment for all that you are claiming for. So what do you do now? Please go to our website, heritagecouncil.ie, and read the guidance document if you have not already done so. I hope it really is helpful to you. If you're interested in applying, please register on our online grant system if you haven't done so already, and start your application. And remember, you can start an application, save it and come back to it. Save it and come back to it. You know, you don't have to do it all in the one go. And most importantly is to supply what is asked for and to submit your application before 5 p.m. Wednesday, the 27th of March. We will not accept late applications. We also will not accept any applications sent by email or by post. They must be made online and must be submitted by 5 p.m. Wednesday, the 27th of March. That's it for now. If you have questions, please email me, Anna, at ameenan@heritagecouncil.ie. You can also email grants@heritagecouncil.ie, and we'll help you as best we can. And lastly, if you are making an application, I wish you the very best with it. Thanks for listening.